What in the world is that? Ranboo blurts out, sitting forwards abruptly in his seat. Refrains, at least, from spreading his hands out against the viewport like an excited child, but only just barely. It's just the forest. Tubbo mutters, tone clipped and tense. Has been the whole flight. But he refuses to admit anything was wrong, pretending like Ranboo couldn't see the death grip he had on the controls. Anxiety pouring off him in waves, as he basically had a panic attack on and off for the last 16 hours. This is the first time they've been out since the crash, the first time Tubbo has flown since, and it's really taking a toll on him. Ranboo's heart constricts painfully in his chest, watching him flinch when the Asachi rattles, hands jerking on the controls like they never have before, jaw tensed and angry as he breathes harshly through his teeth. Tubbo was so wound up he hadn't even put any music on, kept them in whirring silence the entire way. But that was okay. The Asachi sang her song for them as she tore through space like a comet, Ranboo humming along quietly to the rise and fall of her engines. He's missed her so bad. Hadn't really realized the full extent until he could feel the faint tremor of turbines spinning at top speed. Settled back, and was lulled into half-sleep by the contented trilling of their ship, hand dangling over the side of his chair and spread comfortingly against the floor. Dropping out of light speed woke Ranboo up a little, but existing Apoday's atmosphere and seeing the planet's surface kicked him completely awake. Couldn't stop the excited questions tumbling out of his mouth as they raced over the fiery tops of trees. It changes color? Ranboo breathes, amazed, eyes greedily taking in all the warm hues before him. Adoration for this planet cementing itself into his bone marrow. Doesn't think he's ever going to find some place as beautiful in the rest of the galaxy. Yeah? You didn't know that? And Ranboo doesn't want to look away from the sunny yellow and burnt orange leaves, but he thinks he can hear a small smile in Tubbo's voice. Twists to check, and is rewarded with the faintest quirk of lips. Tubbo is still facing forwards. Probably won't be comfortable taking his eyes off what he's doing for a long time. But Ranboo can see where his brow has smoothed out a little, some of the tense lines etched into his face easing up. I did that, Ranboo thinks delightedly, tail waving behind him contentedly. I helped. I can still help him. And he props his arm up on an armrest, nestles his chin in an open palm, and asks brightly, Do they do that every year? It's really enchanting. Oh, do you know what causes them to change colors? Is it in response to the time of year, or... And the more Tubbo starts talking about fall leaves and the bite that seeps into the air, colorful gourds and warm spices, the more he relaxes, like his mind isn't caught up and gummed around and thinking about all the ways things could go wrong. Like he's brought back to here and now, and not stuck in back there and then. It's early morning for this sector of the planet. Sun just starting to rise as they buzz low over grass-covered roofs that are going deep golden brown in the autumn chill. Smoke spilling out of chimneys that's whipped into a frenzy with the Asachi streaking past. Tubbo lands out in the same stretch of fields as last time, but all the grasses have been cut back, leaving peaks of bare red earth and leftover short, nubby stalks that crunch under their boots. Ranboo can't help the little disappointed noise that leaves his mouth, seeing the shorn field. Really liked the memory of brushing his hands through waving, ticklish grasses. And Tubbo turns to him with a cocked brow, asking without asking. And Ranboo sighs. It's silly, really. I just didn't know these got cut back, and I missed the way it was in summer. Yeah, it's used to feed the animals and stuff like that for winter. But it'll regrow next year. We'll just have to come back then. Tubbo huffs fondly from over his shoulder, duffel bouncing against his back as they make their way to the dirt road that cuts through the fields. Not sure about that. Not sure I'm coming back. Ranboo thinks with a deep pang of sadness, knowing that by next summer, things will probably be evened out. That Tubbo won't feel like it's an obligation to take Ranboo places with him anymore. This could be the last time he's on Apidae, and it's such a sobering ache to realize that Ranboo figures he might as well make the most of it. Enjoy what he has while he has it. He could mope and brood the entire time he's here about this being the end, but what's the point of that? It'd completely ruin any enjoyment left to be had. The sun has just crested the tops of the trees by then, throw brilliant shafts of light out in front of them, hitting warm against Ranboo's back, and he stretches languidly, eyes squinting shut for a minute. Living in the moment was always a concept he struggled to understand. Mind a dozen moves ahead, a score of years down the road, overthinking and overanalyzing, controlling and trying to plan for every last little thing. But all that left him with was a sick stomach and jittering anxieties. And it's not like it's easy letting go. Ranboo knows himself, and knows he's always going to be a little neurotic. But he can force himself to take deep breaths, to stop and listen to the wind in the trees, appreciate the sun warming his back and the earth reassuringly under his feet. He can finally get himself to just appreciate being alive, can recognize that for the miracle it is. Avalair is a lot cooler this time of year, especially early in the morning, Tubbo's breath fogging where he walks a little ahead of Ranboo. And while it might be a better temperature for him, Ranboo finds himself missing the sweltering sting of summer. The wind is temperate against his face, sunlight not so strong where the planet is rotating away from Cissan. No bugs singing in the light of early morning. Few hardy wildflowers just beginning to die back, but otherwise, the sides of the road are barren. It's still beautiful. He still adores this place so dearly. It's just different. And as Ranboo watches vibrantly warm leaves swaying in the breeze, loose ones falling and ruffling past, he thinks he'll come to adore Apidae in a new way, just as strongly as before. This time, on the way into town, they're not ambushed by their gaggle of children, Tubbo telling him they're all probably either at school or helping out with chores. But they do bump into townsfolk on their way to work, and it breaks Ranboo's heart a little more every time. The first group of men they come across look like they're going to cry when they spot Tubbo, pull him into hug after hug, each one whispering some iteration of, "Glad you're home, glad you're okay, thank the queens you're safe." Brush antennae together like they're trying to make sure he's real, that he's here, that he's alive. Hands are held, arms are clasped. His brow gets kissed a few times, and several of the people they meet do start crying. One woman thumbing at Tubbo's scarred cheek like she can brush the marks off that way, whispering, shaky under her breath in Apian, "Oh, honey, oh, I'm so sorry, my boy. Glad you're okay, glad you made it back to us." And then, when she catches sight of Ranboo, how could she miss him, long lanky shadow looming over them all? She promptly bursts into a new round of tears, detangles from Tubbo and reaches out for him. He hesitantly slides his discolored hands into hers, unease working out of him with the way she rubs thumbs across his knuckles, staring up at him with shining eyes, stammering fast in broken standard. Thank you for bringing it home. Grazie mille, tesoro." "Por certo, signora," Ranboo says in his best Apian, hopes he rolls the vowels correctly, and the woman breaks out into wet but delighted laughter. Nothing mocking in it as she hauls him closer, just surprised joy while she switches languages seamlessly, crushes Ranboo in a hug and tells him over and over again how thankful she is. She's not the only one. Apparently the entire town seems to know he's the one that pulled Tubbo from the burning wreck, and they layer praise after praise over his shoulders, crown his head in their undying gratitude, bless him with their tears and sincere smiles. Ranboo has mechanics offering him any help he might need for broken equipment, bakers asking him what he likes to eat, promised to be by later with treats, starry-eyed children peeking out from behind their mother's skirts, shyly telling him he's their hero. What? Ranboo stumbles out in standard, so perplexed after the first little boy says it, and the child dips out of sight quickly, his mother patting him on the head with a soft chuckle, looking up at Ranboo equally as odd, and shrugs. They all look up to Bo, Melly. And since you saved him, well, you've captured yourself quite the little following. I just did what anyone would do. Ranboo mumbles, embarrassed. Means it, though. Doesn't know who could leave their partner in a situation like that. He just did the bare minimum anyway, and Tubbo still wound up hurt. But the woman smiles beautifully, shakes her head with a soft laugh. You'd be surprised, Melly. But sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I'm so thankful you were there to help him. I'm so grateful he has you. Ranboo tenses up immediately. Hopes no one else notices the way he goes rigid. Nasty voice of his father whispering. He has you. Doesn't want you. And you don't have him. You're barely friends anymore. Drifting away into the void, nothing left to hang on to. And Ranboo works his jaw back and forth. Politely thanks the woman before moving on. Tubbo won't look at him afterwards, but that's nothing new. And Ranboo bitchily kicks at small rocks in the path until he realizes he's being an ass. That the way Tubbo's hunching into himself doesn't have anything to do with them. It has everything to do with the one thing he refuses to acknowledge. Would have to be close to the end of the world for Tubbo to actually talk about the crash. How it made him feel. How insecure he is now. Terrified to sit in his flight seat. Avoids mirrors, avoids looking at his right hands if he can. And now he's getting bombarded with it. It's harder when they actually get into town. Denser concentration of people. And they mean well. They were all so worried. They care so much. But Ranboo can see Tubbo shifting awkwardly out of his peripheral. Knows he's got to be uncomfortable with all this attention focused on him. On the burns he likes to pretend aren't there. There's an older man trying to sympathize with Tubbo over his melted wing. And it still works, he can still fly. But it's damaged, and it's never not going to be. And Ranboo knows he hates it. Steps in between the two when it looks like Tubbo is going to crawl out of his skin. With years of court training simmering under his smile, Ranboo extracts them easily from the conversation. Manages to dodge and bullshit his way out of any more interactions as he hauls Tubbo up the hill to his mother's. Thanks. Tubbo croaks once they're on their own again. Sounds like he's barely keeping it together. And this is one of those instances where Ranboo feels like it's okay to touch him. Lightly places a hand on his shoulder and murmurs, Of course, I've always got your back, okay? Nodding his head a few times, Tubbo leans very briefly into the contact before seeming to remember and takes a quick step to the side. Wet exhale rattling out of his mouth while he sniffs loud, rubbing two hands into his eyes in an effort to stave off the tears. Attempting to give him some privacy, Ranboo turns the other direction, distracts himself with the pretty gardens flourishing in front of cheerily painted front doors, acts like he can't hear the quiet sniffles on his right. I wish I could take this from you. I wish it had been me, Ranboo thinks, tail lashing behind him angrily. But he can't, and it drives him up the wall. That's his husband, his person, and he hurts. Doesn't know how to show comfort and care in a way that won't sound like love. Settles on a very stilted and formal sounding. What? Shit, sorry, I don't really, sorry, I don't. Tubbo's mumbling thickly. And Ranboo looks over at him, eyes glassy and skin around them red, cheeks glistening a little with scrubbed-off tear tracks. Repeats it quietly in standard from him this time. I mourn with thee. It's said at, like funerals and things like that. Times when another's grief is so much, it's like you feel it yourself. The full expression is, I mourn with thee, thy pain is mine. Shit, you really feel like that? Tubbo whispers, hoarse, eyes wide and unsure. And, fuck, maybe it was too much. But Ranboo didn't know how else to express himself. Drops his eyes to the red dirt under his boots and sighs. Yeah, I hurt because you hurt. I wish that I could do something to help you. I wish it had been me. Don't you even... Tubbo snaps. Unsure expression melting away like ice in a supernova. Replaced with such a complicated mix of fiery emotions Ranboo can't breathe for a second. Still, somehow, taken off guard by the fierce protectiveness Tubbo radiates. I'm glad it wasn't you, okay? Queens, I'm thankful every day it wasn't you. It's my fault we crashed. My stupid ass deserves this. You do not deserve this. Ranboo seethes as he stretches up to his full height, looming over Tubbo, who only defiantly glares back in his face. Stupid chin stuck out in that impossibly stubborn way he has. And Ranboo loves him so much, but he wants to throttle him. You are a good person. Your worth is immeasurable and you matter so much, and not just to me. There are so many people in your life who care for you and want only the best. Tubbo's brows draw down. Storm on the horizon, wants to argue, is going to argue, never knows when to shut up and trust. And bowling over whatever stupid, inane thing that was about to come out of his mouth, Ranboo says, I care about you so incredibly much, and I'll be damned before I ever let something like that happen to you again. You have my word, Tubbo. Sometimes, Ranboo wonders what he looks like when he gets like this. If his emotions bleed through as strong as Tubbo's own. And he thinks they might, at least now. Watching the complicated way Tubbo's face contorts. Things he doesn't have names for, but has felt so viscerally, burning bright in his dark eyes. Something between us. Hard to explain, hard to describe. But it's a blaster aimed at the back of a scaly head. No hesitation. Knees cracking into concrete floors. Hazy words. Barely remember, but I came to find you. I'd always come back for you. Know you're there. Know you anywhere. He hurt you. I let him hurt you. And in that instance, at least, they feel like themselves again. Like these last few weeks just drop away and take their impossible snarl of emotions with them as they go. And it's just them left. Ranboo and Tubbo. Back to back, heads bent together, side by side. The way it always should have been. But then reality rushes back in, and it's not so simple anymore. Breaking eye contact first, Ranboo looks up the road to where Cissan's house is. Morning sun slanting across his face and making him squint. Fall breeze tangling through his too long hair. Remember when fingers used to? Remember when you used to have a braid? When you used to have a cariad? And he sighs, nodding his head. Come on. Your mom is probably waiting for us. The rest of the short walk feels like an eternity. Boots crunching over loose stones, echoing back like the crack of blaster fire. And Ranboo's pulse ratchets up seeing that little blue door come into view. Can only think about the last time he was here. Racing off in the morning sun. Thought he'd just gotten married. Small hand on his arm. Keep watching out for my boy. Keep him safe. Burns across his skin. Wing crinkled in. You promised. You failed. Ranboo swallows harshly. Suddenly terrified because he knows. Cissan knows. But she hasn't seen. And that's her son. Her only child. Cares about him so much. Would give anything for him, and he's hurt. Was hurt, proof of that, tattooed over his skin for the rest of his life. His tail whips behind him, fingers curling into fists, because does she know about everything else? The marriage? What will she think then, seeing him? There's Ranboo the manipulator, the relationship fabricator, delusional psychopath that let her son down, that couldn't get him out fast enough, that let him burn. She's not going to be mad at you. Tubbo murmurs, jolting Ranboo out of his spiral, and he whips to stare wide-eyed at Tubbo. Wry, crooked little grin tugging his lips up. Oh, don't give me that look. I know you. Can practically hear you overthinking, Boo. Ranboo starts, and then doesn't know what he's going to say. I know you, whispering through his head, like the beginning, dangerous curls of a sandstorm. And Tubbo steps closer for a brief second, hands touching lightly on Ranboo's back, and sends his head spinning before they're gone. She's not going to be upset, promise. Fair warning, though, she's probably going to cry. And so am I. His voice cracks slightly, broken up by the mounting pressure of sobs gathering under his ribs. And Ranboo's own chest feels like a dagger is twisting into it. Sorry. So sorry you have to deal with this. That I wasn't fast enough. That I let you both down. Follows along silently, like he's on his way to the gallows, as Tubbo steps up to the door. He hesitates the briefest bit before knocking with his left hands. And it takes a second, but then the door is easing inwards. Cissan's trying to smile, trying so hard to put up a brave face. But then she actually sees Tubbo, registers the scars, understands how bad it must have been. And that's her son, that's her baby. And her smile crumples inwards, sobs spitting out of her mouth as she surges forwards and hugs him tight. He's taller than her, but in the never-ending power of mothers, she gets Tubbo tucked under her chin, muttering furiously into his hair as tears stream down her face. A half-coherent litany of lyrical words pressed into the crown of his head. I love you, I'm so sorry, my baby, you're okay. Love you more than anything, thank the queens you're okay. That they brought you back to me, love you, love you, love you. Tubbo buries his face in the crook of her neck, and like promised, he's bawling too, hanging on to her like his life depends on it. And Ranboo has never felt more like an outsider in his entire life. He shouldn't be here, not his place, not his family. Edges backwards so he won't disturb them as he steps through reality. He remembers the coordinates well enough, drops him out further up the road, where it just kinda peters out into rolling fields, steps into thigh-high grasses, and starts walking. Doesn't really have a destination in mind. Further out in the field, but not too far from town, is a smattering of large boulders, now dried flowers poking through cracks and divots in the stone. And Ranboo scrabbles up the side of one, sets his duffel to the side and settles down. He runs hands absent-mindedly over the rough surface, feels something a little too unnatural under his finger pads and glances down, sees what's probably years' worth of graffiti carved into the speckled surface. There's the usual, I was here, but in Apian, scratching of initials both inside and out of hearts, a few crude-looking dicks that someone really took the time to carve in. And Ranboo wonders how many generations of Avalar youth came out here to sit where he is now, looking back over their town. It's such a small thing. Could probably be contained by the square footage of Voidfall alone. And he's willing to bet the kids here despaired over that, sat up on these rocks and daydreamed about being anywhere else. Well, Ranboo's been to a lot of anywhere else's, and frankly, he's a little tired of it. Wishes the reverse. That he had someplace like this to come back to. The Syndicate is nice, don't get him wrong, but it's not a permanent thing. Whole nature of it designed to be constantly in flux. People coming and going at all hours. Some days they're here, next they're gone. Tired of that. Tired of spiraling through the void. Want stability. Want earth under your feet. Sighing heavily, Ranboo leans forwards and props his arm up on a folded leg, drops his chin into an awaiting palm. Doesn't know when he stopped craving adventure. He thinks it might have been when they were falling out of the sky, when he still thought he was married and despaired over never having gotten to live a life with Tubbo like he wanted. And in those few seconds before impact, Ranboo knew instantly what kind of life he wanted. And it was something like this. Small home in a small place, where people knew you and enjoyed your company. Strong sense of community and being there for one another. And it's not like Ranboo never wanted to get out and see other places, but his heart aches to know he has some place to come back to come home to. He wants a little house set into the hills where he can paint the door yellow, grow sunflowers out front, and walk to the market barefoot and have no one bat an eye. Talk to his neighbors without fear of them slipping poison into his food or a dagger into his back. Someplace to hang long lines of photos up that stretch and grow along with the years. And it's such a stupid, naive little dream to have. Ranboo rubs fingers carefully into his eyes, knows all the way down to his bones, at his core, that this kind of life isn't meant for him. No rest for men like me, doomed to be unmoored, doomed to be alone. And smoothing his hands out to the back of his neck, Ranboo locks his fingers together and stares ahead, unseeing. He knows he can't stay here on his own. He's Ender, and the people of Avalar may be fine with him now, the infrequent and short times he's shown up. But how would they feel if he was here permanently? Like a colonizer. Just moved into their town and started adopting their customs? Would they be too afraid to say anything? Worried he'd go crying to the Empire he'd shred with his claws if he could? Or would they run him out of town? Band together and say enough is enough and drive him away? And they'd have every right to. But Ranboo's not sure he could handle a rejection on that scale, from a place that lives so deeply in his heart. Not when his heart still aches and bleeds from care for you, but not like that. Never like that. Don't want you, never have. Not true. He feels something. He cares for you in his own way. Mother argues, ever the optimist, and Ranboo shakes his head with a rueful smile. Yes, but not in the way I want. And what I want is something he can't give me. Never would have been able to give me. I want the earth, and he needs the stars. It wasn't meant to be. That's the real kicker, right? Because even if Tubbo had loved him, had wanted to stay, he never would have settled for the kind of life Ranboo has come to realize he craves like you'd crave oxygen. Ranboo is a newly aware homesteader, hopelessly in love with a wanderer. And that's what's been getting to him this last week or two. The understanding that he and Tubbo wouldn't have worked out anyway. They're too different. Enough of the same to make a go at it, but it was doomed love from the start. Star-crossed Cariads on opposite ends of the galaxy. Dual-orbiting stars knocked out of alignment. And, hanging his head, Ranboo stares at the speckled surface of the boulder and wonders if it'll ever stop hurting. You can't have everything you want, Ranboo. And he knows, okay? He thinks he might have always known. And it's probably stupid and melodramatic to feel like this. But that's kinda just who Ranboo is. And he huffs out a tired laugh. Honestly doesn't think he's ever really gotten anything he's wanted. His ears flick, hearing the grasses on his right crunching softly. Figures someone's come for their hangout spot, and he ought to move. Doesn't belong here anyway. Ranboo freezes, though, when he sees who's heading his way, stuck in place as she stops at the foot of the boulder, one hand shading her eyes, others propped on her hips. Got room for one more? Cissan asks, and there's no indication she's been crying in her voice. Tone warm and chipper like it always is. And nodding woodenly, Ranboo scoots over, making enough space for her to land with a soft tap of bare feet. Cissan sits down in a puddle of russet-colored skirts, hands fussing them into better order. Warm, multicolored hexagons scattered across the material like falling leaves. Says, conversationally, You know, it's funny I find you here. Bo used to come out here a lot and sulk, too. I'm not sulking, Ranboo grumbles, sulkily. And it just figures he'd find some spot that was important to Tubbo. Drawn together like magnets, like the bonds that hold the universe together, unbreakable ties. Claws scratching at a carved dick with a pretty good idea of who put it there. Humming, non-committally, Cissan looks over at him, arms crossing as she playfully cocks her head to the side. 6 of one, half dozen of the other, but either way, I've got a bone to pick with you, mister. What's all this running off before I get the chance to say hello, Sorry. Ranboo stammers, ducking his head with an embarrassed flush on his face. Ears pinning back in shame. Worried she's upset. That he's done something wrong, and of course you have. You couldn't protect her son. Broke your promise. She hates you. She's always hated you, imperial scum, colonizer, Indirian dog. Ranboo. Melly, I'm just teasing. Her soft voice hushes. Careful touch along his arm that grows more sure when he doesn't pull away. Fingers tugging at him gently to get his attention. Hey, now. I'm sorry, Tessero. I talk without thinking a lot. Bet you wouldn't believe that, Oh, Ranboo, won't you look at me, Dulcito? He does, hesitantly, afraid of upsetting her more by not complying. But she smiles at him, reaches over very slowly and tucks some hanging hair behind his ear. There are those pretty eyes. No need to hide them, Melly, they're so lovely. I'm sorry for making you think I was upset with you. I'm not, Dulcito. Really, truly, I just miss you is all. I missed you, too. Ranboo stumbles out without thinking. But there's fingers petting through his hair, and there haven't been in so long his brain is melting a little. He is at least aware enough not to rub his head forcefully against Cissan's hand. Can't stop the soft, rattling coo that eases free when she scratches at his scalp, though. And Cissan murmurs gently, Is it okay if I hug you? Ranboo nods his head so fast, and then she's dragging him in. 2 pairs of arms curling around his back as he carefully tucks his under her wings. It's like the memory of a dream. Something not quite right, a little off. Stop it. Stop it. Know what's off. Know what you're wanting, but cut it out. Not fair to you. Not fair to her. And he presses his cheek into her hair, biting his lip hard in the hopes it'll stop the bubbling sobs. I was so worried about you. Cissan sniffs in a tone Ranboo is very familiar with, snatching and catching weird, on the verge of tears, cry just the same. And her arms tighten, somehow drag him closer. Queens above, when I got the message from Technoblade about this crash, oh, Queens, I'm so sorry. Ranboo wheezes, scared of squeezing her too hard. She's so small, and he doesn't want to hurt her. Didn't want to hurt either one of them, but they stand crying in each other's arms, terrified they'd lost one another. Words tumbling out fast and jumbled. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Why are you apologizing, lovey? I'm a mama. I'm always going to worry. Cissan laughs tremulously, hands patting affectionate circles around his back. But that's not what Ranboo's talking about, and he rocks his head, whimpering. I promised you. I told you I'd keep him safe, and he almost died. Sorry. Terrible person. Failed you. Failed him. I'm sorry. A pair of her hands are gone, lightning quick. Resettle along the back of his head and tug him down incessantly. And Ranboo is so much taller than her, has a horn and everything, but somehow, some way, she gets him tucked under her chin. Her fingers card through his hair, coax free all the aching, wailing, desperate sobs that sit burning under his ribs. And he stops trying to pretend, hides in the crook of her neck, and cries. Cissan smells like lavender and baking bread, like colorful patchwork quilts and a dusty kind of warmth. Holds him like she cares for him, like he's hers. Whispers furiously against his temple. None of that now, you hear me? You haven't failed anyone. You did everything you could, and I'm so proud of you. Ranboo wails, huddling into Cissan, and pretends he's smaller than he is, that he's little and has 2 horns and no scars and so much hope. Gasps brokenly. It was so bad. I thought that I was going to have to watch him die. I failed. Didn't have his back. Couldn't watch his 6. I let him get hurt. You did incredible. You were so smart and so brave. Cissan murmurs, fire-bright fingers soothing along his scalp, rubbing over his shoulders, and unbiddenly, Ranboo starts to relax. Great heaving cries quieting into soft whimpers as she hushes. You saved my son's life. I can never thank you enough, Melly. Thank you for what you did for him. Thank you for getting him back to me. I would have given my life for him. Ranboo croaks out, chest still shaking a little with leftover sobs. And he means it. He really would have. Would give anything so Tubbo is safe and happy and cared for. And Ranboo thinks it's that mentality more than anything that shows the depths of his feelings for him. I know you would have, and I'm glad you didn't have to. Cissan hums, hand dropping from his hair to wrap over one of his own, lifts it gently so she can inspect the gray smattering of scars across his knuckles. How light his fingertips are now. Wet exhale shuddering out. Oh, Tessero, I'm so sorry you were hurt like this. It breaks my heart to see both my boys like... She cuts herself off as quickly as she can, but it wasn't soon enough. Ranboo still heard, boys, my boys. Does she mean like... No, she can't. You don't belong here. Don't fit. Not your place, not your home, not your family. Moves back enough to lift his head. Stares at her with trepidation in his eyes, and traitorous hope burning in his chest. Tears run down Cissan's cheeks, skin red and blotchy, and her eyebrows are curved sharply inwards. Worry settled deep in the lines of her face. But those night-dark eyes dart over him, and she huffs out a tired laugh, shakes her head with a rueful smile. I never know when to shut up, do I? But I mean it, Ranboo. Mi tesoro, mi corde. And it may not be my place, but you're like a son to me. 2 hands come up to cup his face, thumbs sweeping out under his eyes, and it's the same motion as hands trailing over his back, through his hair, care for you, always care for you, my darling, my littlest, my baby. And his heart stutters in his chest when Cissan says, I know you have a mama, and I'm not trying to replace her. I just care for you so much, sweetheart. And I'm here for whatever you need. I'll always be here. Never leaving you. Not really. Always been here, always will be, in the stars overhead, in the earth under your feet, inside your own heart, inside hers. The wind whispers, the cosmos sighs. And Ranboo's lower lip wobbles, staring at eyes that are overflowing with affection. Looking at him like he's worth something. Like he matters, like he's cared for, like he's hers. And he crashes forwards, crying, Amma, Amma. It's instinctual at this point to knock their foreheads together, to try and rub his horn into the antenna that tickle around it. Know you, different people, different planets, but family all the same. And she holds him while his back jerks with sobs, runs hands through his hair and sings sweet in Apian, presses a kiss into his brow and calls him son. They walk back to her house arm in arm once the tears have stopped. Ranboo escorting her like he would any lady of the court. And Cissan asks him about his work with Puffy. Has a pretty good understanding of mechanical engineering given who her husband was, who her son is. Neighbors call out greetings as they pass. Don't seem put off at all when Cissan introduces Ranboo as her boy. Only thing they react surprised to, the way sibilant words flow out of his mouth. All seem happily startled and impressed by his Apian. You've taught him well, hardly an accent, a sister-in-law praises, and Ranboo shyly twists his feet together while Cissan laughs loudly, dragging him into a side hug. Oh, I've barely done anything. He's just incredibly smart. You should hear him talk about his work, and I do mean to brag, but he's basically a genius. Cissan, Ranboo protests weakly, a little nervous to refer to her as Amma with others, not sure if that's okay, if she wants him to publicly claim her like that. And she chases those fears out of his head with a light swat to the hip, quipping in Apian, "Hey, don't argue with your mom." Warm, affectionate, excited, overwhelming things race up from his feet to the top of his head. Mom, Amma, hers, I'm hers. Tint his cheeks and the tips of his ears a dark purple, and Ranboo vibrates practically the entire way back. Doesn't know what to do with the feelings prickling under his skin like stardust. Is this okay? Are you okay with this? Ranboo asks softly, where he's unlacing his boots by the front door. Benson jumping at his feet and creating a ruckus Cissan is trying to hush because Tubbo's apparently sleeping. And Mother laughs, soaring from all around him. Of course, you aren't forgetting me by finding care in someone else. I'm still here. I always will be. But now she is too, and we'll care for you together. Any guilty insecurities he had evaporate like mist in the heat of the day. And Ranboo stands side by side with Cissan in her kitchen, follows along diligently as she talks him through the recipes she's making. He chops vegetables with his discolored fingers wrapped steady around the hilt of a knife, laughs free and open, smile crinkling his eyes, and sunlight streams in through hexagon windows, paints bright shapes on the worn floorboards where Benson's dozing, and everything's right. Cissan swats at him playfully, bumps their hips together, and sings loud and disjointed to the old stereo crackling in the corner. And when she lightly tugs at his ponytail, smile pinching her eyes and forming dimples, it feels like this is his to have, like he could stay if he wanted. Your hair's gotten so long, hijo, Cissan hums, moving to give the stew a quick stir, releasing another wave of savory steam into the air, heavily perfumed with the pungent greens Ranboo helped chop earlier, and baskets full of fresh mushrooms. He pauses his own mixing of the sweet cheese filling for the cake, fingers a little sticky from orange juice and honey, so he uses the back of his hand to push the bangs out of his eyes. Sighs lightly. I know, it's kind of annoying. I'm thinking about cutting it. No. The sleepy protest is mumbled vehemently from the door to the kitchen. And Ranboo whips his head to the side fast, heart stupidly in his throat and doing double time, seeing Tubbo standing there. Balled up fist rubbing into an eye while he yawns, hair 1,000 different directions. Looks good. You! Cissan barks, rounding on him with her wooden spoon brandished like a firearm, playful light twinkling in her eyes. Remember what I said last time? About those scissors? What happened about that, huh? You look like a shrub. Tubbo shuffles further into the kitchen and pulls out a chair with a scrape. Flops down into it, sighing. You do hear yourself, right? Like, it's comical at this point. The hypocrisy. Get onto me for my hair, but then tell him he looks handsome. Ranboo has high cheekbones. Longer hair suits him, Cissan declares with an air of finality. Turns back to her soup. And it's pleasantly quiet for a second. And then, with a light rap against the side of the pot, she says, a little too casually, "Oh, also, I never said he was handsome, even though he is." Electricity crackles up his spine, and Ranboo makes the mistake of looking at Tubbo. Finds him staring back, face starting to go bright red, and his own bleeds dark purple at the sight. He spins on his heel, returns to mixing the cake together with shaking hands now. Pulse a frantic drumbeat under his skin, mind kicked back and forth between doesn't want you, care for you, but not like that, nothing permanent, and kinda like you, wanted to hold your hand, looks good, looks handsome. He doesn't feel the same. He doesn't want what you want. Ranboo reminds himself, being careful to spoon out the same-sized amount of cheese filling into the cake pan. And it's a good distraction. Ends up making something slightly reminiscent of flower petals resting in the batter. With the cake and stew done, Cissan shoos them out of the kitchen and gently reminds them that the rest of the family is going to be by later. Tells them to enjoy their day until then. Only problem with that being that Ranboo has no idea what to do with Tubbo anymore. So, for lack of a better idea, they end up back in his room and sit on the floor playing ancient video games. They're not really that old. Belonged to Tubbo's father when he was younger. But Ranboo's only frame of reference is the sleek console and crisp graphics of the system Monto had at his name day party. The blocky designs are somehow more endearing, Ranboo finds. Spends a good amount of time admiring them rather than trying to win. Clear from the start, Tubbo has played these a lot, and it's not really a contest. He takes the silly little racing game about as seriously as flying the Asachi. Eyes fixed determinedly forwards, wings flickering behind him excitedly, and there's no winning against that. Tubbo may have gotten shot down, but he's still the best pilot Ranboo's ever seen. And he knows that if the Asachi had the same kind of power, same unstoppable heart beating at her core, the two of them would have won easily. It's thoughts like these that make Ranboo bemoan being cut off from the royal coffers. And he was too nervous when he first ran away that he didn't try it. But now, he's really wishing he'd forked over the small grand it'd take to get Tubbo End crystal reactors. And what a thought that is. Their ship's turbines glowing bright teal, burning through the galaxy faster than anyone else could fly. And Ranboo hums dreamily, completely stalling in the racing game. And Tubbo blows past him a few times, eventually questioning, "Hey, you good, man?" "Yeah, just thinking about the Asachi with end crystal reactors." Ranboo sighs wistfully. Doesn't think anything of it until Tubbo bursts out into laughter. Glares over at him indignantly, whatever quip he was about to make, dying on his tongue, seeing the way Tubbo smiles at him. Shaking his head fondly. "Queens, sorry, it's just, you sound just like me." "Well, you're clearly a terrible influence," Ranboo mutters, breaking eye contact because he can't handle the way Tubbo looks in the afternoon light, eyes all scrunched up, staring so fondly at Ranboo it almost looks like he... Nope, not going there. We are not doing that again. But the memories are suddenly everywhere, and all Ranboo can see, can hear, is being in this room months ago, when he watched morning light halo Tubbo's head while he told him he loved him. Never thought you'd hear those words. Have someone look at you like that. Never thought this would be yours to have. And it's not. It never was. Ranboo has to cruelly remind himself. Turns his attention back to the racing game and drags up other memories instead. Pale face, eyes blown wide in terror, not like that, don't like you like that, not husbands, not Cariads, don't love you, don't want you unless it's temporary, until I change my mind. And the next few races, Ranboo wipes the floor with Tubbo, to his immense displeasure. "It's my birthday. You're supposed to be nice to me." Tubbo grumbles, not paying attention as he flicks through the games on the console, and Ranboo's ears flatten. Really has to fight the urge not to snip. You can't have everything you want, Tubbo. Thankfully, they're not alone for too much longer. People start showing up late afternoon once they get off work, and the entire house is soon filled with waving arms and laughing dark eyes, mischievous grins, and children darting around underfoot. Ranboo's not surprised to learn Healy is a cousin, daughter of one of Tubbo's uncles, and the little girl is ecstatic to see him, launches herself at Ranboo, and starts on about his blaster, which he, again, left on the ship for obvious reasons. There are some other kids he remembers from the summer. Lawless, Marini, Taurus. And they all greet him excitedly in standard, crowd close and want to know about missions, look inquisitively at his hands and ask what happened in that honest but insensitive way children have. Ranboo's not really sure what to tell them, what their parents would be okay with them knowing. Settles for the simple truth of he got hurt trying to help Tubbo. If possible, this makes all the children hang off him more, trail along after his heels like pesky little endermites. And there's a few new faces he doesn't recognize, but they all introduce themselves loudly, only dropping their voices to whisper and giggle in their native language amongst each other, like they think he can't hear them. And despite all of Cissan's bragging, Ranboo is still very much a beginner speaker when it comes to Apian. But he's got the basics, and double takes hearing what he thinks the kids are referring to him as. What? Queen? Why am I a queen? Ranboo sputters in Apian, not sure he overheard them correctly. But the children all shriek delightedly, and in between their high-pitched giggling voices, Ranboo finally gets some pieced-together explanation that he's queen because he's tall. Before he can even question that, he gets drug into a game of hide-and-go-seek tag, races barefoot through the grass fields over the top of Cissan's house, breathless and wild as he swipes at the ankles soaring above him. Ranboo could honestly catch them if he was really trying, but that would just end in stuck-out lips and temper tantrums. So he plays along with the idea that they somehow have the upper hand. Lets himself get tackled to the earth a few times by overexcited kids dive-bombing him. It really doesn't hurt to have Healy crash into him where she was zipping by overhead, but Ranboo collapses to the ground and rolls them both around, ends with her sitting on his chest, cackling, as he fakes a very dramatic and gruesome death. "Death to the Queen!" Healy crows like the little goblin she is, beating her fists into her chest for good measure, giggling like crazy when Ranboo sticks his tongue out with each hit. And another cousin pipes up quickly. "Healy, watch it, that's regicide." "Your mom's regicide!" a boy shouts from somewhere overhead, and Ranboo can't help breaking character, laughing loudly at the idiocy of young children. This spurs all of them into a joke-telling battle. Has Ranboo wheezing he's laughing so hard at their ridiculous attempts at humor. Head tipped back in the warm autumn light, contentment and peace and belonging singing under his skin like spinning turbines. A shout carries up over the hill, one of the ants calling for them to come in and wash up, that dinner's almost ready. And the children scramble off in a mad dash, Healy launching herself off Ranboo's chest with a snap of her wings, punching all the air from his lungs. He's struggling to sit up, his abdomen hurts so bad. In part from all the involuntary laughing, and also from Healy using him like a springboard. When there's a scarred set of hands in his face, soft voice asking, "Need a hand? Maybe even two?" "Honey, you're funny," Ranboo wheezes, taking Tubbo's hands and lets himself be hauled up. Goes to drop them and finds he can't, pale fingers curling around his own, and his heart stutters out of time. Looking up at Tubbo is a mistake. It's always a mistake. And he's so lovely in the setting sun, flashing spark in his navy eyes that make them glow a deep blue. But his expression is conflicted, confused and scared and lost. It's like he's desperately hoping Ranboo's going to have the answer he needs to a question he can't figure out, one he isn't able to find for himself. But what is Ranboo supposed to do for him? He doesn't know either. Has been fumbling and failing just as badly. Lost on who they are, what they even are to each other anymore. "We can't do this," is what Ranboo says. But what he means, what gets caught up in his throat, is, "Don't do this to me. You know I want to be yours, and I know you don't want to be mine. Please don't do this to me." But Tubbo just wets his lips, fingers flexing gently over his wrist. "Ranboo, let go." Ranboo urges, soft but firm. Let go. Move on. I'm trying to. Why aren't you? And Tubbo does, but his hands are slow moving off Ranboo's skin. Fingers hesitating, like they don't want to say goodbye. And Ranboo shudders as the last few slip away. He leaves Tubbo standing up there, heads back inside, and gets bombarded with a dozen too loud voices and delicious smells. Tries to be normal, tries to be social, but it's like he's not actually down here. It's like he's still up there, standing on a small hill in the fading sun, wondering when things got so complicated. Dinner is a blur. Ranboo eats and doesn't taste anything. Has no idea what he's saying in response to questions. Might be speaking Indirian for all he knows. But he can't stop thinking about the way Tubbo looked at him, how he said his name. A desperate plea, a fruitless prayer. What is he doing? What am I doing? Ranboo drags his spoon through the dregs of his broth. Doesn't want to be, but is listening intently for any snatch of Tubbo's voice. Is he messing with me? No, he'd never. Just doesn't know what he wants. But he sounded so sure, never wanted this. Ranboo's ears flick when he hears that bubbling laughter. Peeks up and finds Tubbo further down the table, grinning at something one of his cousins is saying. All of her hands waving around while she talks, and he laughs again. Eyes scrunching closed, dimples in his cheeks. Hi, sunshine. With a sigh, Ranboo pushes back from the table and goes to drop his bowl in the sink. Edges out of the kitchen and towards the front door. Feels like he needs some fresh air. The temperature has dropped steadily after the sunset, and it's still not actually cold for Ranboo, but he can recognize it's chilly. Pulls the edges of his bomber closer as he leans against the garden fence. Out here, so far away from any big cities, there's no light pollution to dilute the night sky, and the stars blaze overhead. Fuzzy, glowing band of one of Andromeda's arms arching across the sky like a smile. Hi, Mama. Ranboo whispers, head tipped back and eyes raking reverentially over the cosmos. Last stray wisps of wind batting at his hair gently. Fingers tugging at his ear, tweaking his nose. Hi, darling. And he sighs, lacing his fingers together. How are you? Hope you're doing well. I don't know if I am. I'm so confused. I feel so lost. Tell me. I'm here. I'll listen. Let it go. Set it free. Let the night take it away from you. The stars thrum. The earth under his feet hushes. And Ranboo bows his head, stares out over a dark, sleepy town with glowing orange lights that sputter happily in windows. I don't know what to do about Tubbo. It seems like everything I do pushes us further apart, and I'm scared. I don't know how to stop it. There's no bugs singing in the night, just the muffled sound of too many voices calling excitedly at his back. His own words, gentle and quiet, easing out to the stars like the first tentative steps of a new dance. I'm worried if things keep going like they're going, that we're not even going to be friends anymore. Promised he'd always be there, that you'd always be friends. Trust him. Why don't you trust him? Mother asks, cold hand finding his shoulders as the sounds of the party spike, and then quiet in a short burst. And blowing out a huge breath, Ranboo tips their heads together. It's not that I don't trust him, it's just I think he's confused right now, and it's been really hard. The phantom sensation of fingers threaded through his, circling his wrist. Lost look in his eyes. Don't go. Please stay. Makes Ranboo shudder. Corrosive pain bubbling to life under his bones. And he knows he can't keep doing this forever. I don't know what he wants. Ranboo exhales sharply, fingers flexing against one another, thumbs rubbing across his own knuckles. Fire-bright pear in his instead. Love you, Stelle. Don't care for you like that. Don't want to be married. Don't love you. And he shakes his head. But I know it's not what I want. How do you know? You haven't asked. Said he liked you. Could grow to love you in his own way. Mother tries to argue. And she's always been the brightest point in Ranboo's mind. His largest and most beautiful guiding light. But she's also the source of all his hopeless delusions. You know that's not how it works. Ranboo snorts, raising his head back up so his eyes can trace over the heavens. Thinks he likes the look of the stars better from down here, where he can flex his toes into the earth. I love him because I'm me. Because he's him. I was just always supposed to love him. But he was never going to love me. Ranboo's voice catches weird, and he laughs a little wetly. Gentle ache around his lungs from a few pathetic sobs. But he won't let them free. Flexes his arms out in front of him and takes a deep breath. That's okay, though. We're too different. Want different things, and that's okay. I want to stay. He wants to go. I want something permanent. He doesn't. And it's better to know now instead of later, because now Ranboo doesn't have to get too attached. More than he already is. Can you be more fixed than molecular bonds holding something together? Very fabric of reality urging you to close the gap. Complete the loop. Reach out, take his hand, finish the equation. Refit those two halves together. And whispering it out, like it's the greatest crime to admit, Ranboo says, because now might be a good time to go our separate ways. And the world is silent, stars seeming to dim with his admission. And Ranboo knows then, without a shadow of a doubt, that he doesn't mean it, that it was a mistake to say. But before he can refute it, there's a hushed voice crying, I don't want to. Ranboo jerks upright, spins around, feels something like déjà vu seeing Tubbo standing behind him. Stricken look on his face. But instead of all-consuming panic that swallows him whole, it's more of a quiet dread. Because this just figures. He's gotten bad about eavesdropping, Ranboo thinks with a sigh. Tries to roll out some of the tenseness that just crept into his shoulders. He's not sure how much Tubbo overheard. Doesn't really matter, he knew most of it anyway. But that last bit was less than ideal. Probably has him worrying about partner transfer request forms and guilty gray wings that droop towards the floor. Not you. Nothing personal. Sorry, I can't. And Ranboo goes to reassure him. Sorry, I misspoke. I don't want to change partners or anything. Don't worry, that's not what I meant. Tubbo stammers. Takes a step forwards and then stops, halfway off his mother's front porch as he stares imploringly at Ranboo. Can we talk? It's such a simple request, but nothing has ever made Ranboo's heart pound so erratically, so quickly. There's so much behind it. Feels like he's going to shake apart at the seams, sick of anxiety swirling to life, and it sounds like skeletons sniggering in the night. No, all of you, shut up. Slams the doors on their sunken faces. Calm down. Focus. Get it together. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Ranboo hedges, slowly, proud with the way his voice doesn't shake. But Tubbo deflates immediately, lower hands stuffed in the pockets of his bomber, upper set dropping weakly to his sides. Yeah, okay, I get that, fuck. Yeah, okay. The defeated tone to his voice sets that door rattling like it's possessed, and Ranboo aims a sharp glare at it, Remember what he said, what he told you. Don't feel that way, doesn't want to be married. Get a grip. But then, easing out through some gap, like a traitorous little breath of fresh air, felt like that then, but things change. Not for me. Ranboo snaps back at the memory automatically. But it curls a little closer, over his hands, up his arms, settles deep in his chest like the way nebula expand out into protostars. Like how planets come into existence. And it whispers right along the core of his being. Didn't they, though? Didn't things change? Haven't you? Ranboo can't breathe for a minute. Can't find the words to argue because he doesn't have them. Helpless to stop that feeling worming deeper. And it does, with glee. Melds into his bones like starlight, like auroras burning in the sky overhead. Change isn't always bad. Change isn't always permanent. Unbreakable bonds, but they still flex. They still move with the flow of life. It's about balance. It's about finding your place in the stars. You don't know what you're talking about. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. Ranboo feebly tries to protest. But the thing isn't listening. Too busy humming through his veins like turbines spinning at warp. Like the otherworldly thrum and song of stars as they radiate through the endless night. The universe is constantly in flux. There is no one answer. There is no clear path. It's beautiful. It's chaos. It's life, and there's no right way to live it. But what if I'm wrong? What if I get hurt? I'm scared. Ranboo whispers, curling closer to the thing that smiles at him brilliantly. Skin alight like the most livid of nebula. Binary sun eyes and stardust dripping down from long ears. Lone horn sweeping out of trailing hair that curls and snaps like a comet's tail. It laughs joyously. Nothing cruel in it, just delighted pleasure at being alive. Drifts closer and cups his face in hands of starlight. That's okay. It's okay to be scared. Life's hard, but you don't have to face it alone. And if it's any consolation, he's scared too. That drops him back to reality, to himself, away from himself. And Ranboo hesitantly meets Tubbo's eyes, startled to see the same fears and worries that he feels racing through his veins, mirrored in those night-dark eyes. His heart jumps painfully. We're the same. We're the same in this, terrified over losing one another, drifting too far, unmoored, lost forever in the void. And swallowing hard, Ranboo takes a shaky step forwards. But if you just reached out, if you took each other's hands, you'd have something to tether to. Wouldn't have to be lost alone. Murmurs, haltingly. Yeah, okay. Let's talk. They meander out into the autumn night, side by side, and not quite light years apart anymore. Tubbo leading the way towards where Ranboo has a pretty good idea they're going. Isn't surprised at all to find himself back at the clustering of boulders. It's different sitting up here at night. Darkness swallowing everything but the bright smattering of wavering lights from the windows in Avalar. Nothing but the blazing star fields of eternity stretching wide overhead. Tubbo sits hunched over with his hands clasped around his raised knees, head tipped back to stare at the cosmos with so much naked adoration. It's staggering. I've been thinking a lot these past few weeks, and I just wanted to talk to you about what I'm feeling. Okay. Ranboo whispers, and even he can tell it sounds broken. Scared and afraid, doesn't want to get his hopes up, can't do this again, can't listen to how he's not loved. And Tubbo sighs, shuffling into himself further, chin propped up on his folded arms. I didn't understand when you said you were made to love me. I didn't get how love was different for you than for me. I didn't understand what being Cariads meant. Cariads rolls off his tongue like he's been saying it for years. No hesitation, no fumbling, like he's practiced the shape of it. And Ranboo feels like he's being spun off through the air, wondering if he has, scrambling to collect his bearings as Tubbo keeps going. But I think I understand a little better. Being Cariads is like being soulmates, right? But it's different. It's not the same for everyone. Yeah. No two people love the same way. Not everyone cares for one another similarly, but that's what makes a Cariad so special. Ranboo hushes softly. The thing of starlight coiling happily under his skin, wound up tight through his ribs, and spreading a hand out against his chest. Ranboo hears it whisper, "I love you," back through the beating of his heart. A Cariad is supposed to be the being that knows you better than anyone. Your other half. They're supposed to love you in all the ways you want to be loved. Hand drifting up to fiddle with the long strands of his hair. Ranboo huffs and coils it quick around his fingers while he fidgets. It's not perfect. It's still work, but it's just knowing all the way at your core that this is the person for you. That they're able to love you more wholly than anyone else can. And being in a relationship with them is the promise to keep trying to make it work. To keep loving each other like no one else can. And you feel like that about me? Yes. Sorry if that makes you uncomfortable. Ranboo sighs, looks up at the stars now, too. At the infinity he was always chasing after, the freedom he wanted to win for himself. Spreads a hand out over the rock under him and thinks he's found happiness where he is now. No one's ever cared for me like you have. You make me feel seen, heard, important. I wanted to become a better person because of you, to keep growing. You inspire me. You helped me realize life was worth living. There's a sharp inhale next to him, and Ranboo shakes his head. Too much. You're always too much. Smiles ruefully at where a comet darts past overhead. Bright flash of its tail streaking through the night like a glittering tear of the universe. Like the vivid glow of engines powering up to warp time to leave this behind you. Sorry, that was probably a little much. And you don't need to worry. I'm not going to pressure you into anything. I know you don't feel the same. You're wrong. Those two words stop Ranboo dead in his tracks. Engines stalling out. Warp core malfunctioning. Feels like the universe quits turning. Like everything is at a standstill, and he should be drifting off into space without gravity to yank him back down. And slowly, terrified, Ranboo wrenches his eyes away from the heavens. What? You're wrong. Tubbo repeats thickly, already looking back at Ranboo, and the breath stalls in his lungs because it's like looking at the cosmos. Endless infinity in his eyes, the universe looking back at you, the one that knows you, the one that loves you. I've never felt like this for another person. I don't think I ever will again. I didn't understand you earlier, when you told me loving me was a part of your being, but I get it now. There's no way. It's not possible. He said he'd never, that he didn't want, but things change. Life spins on, there's always a chance. You just have to be willing to put in the effort. You just have to be willing to try. It's like space. Tubbo hushes, and the stars in his eyes throb and dance and reach out for Ranboo with glowing hands. Come with us. Come fly with us. Know your place. Know where you belong, and it's right here. It's right here with him. I love the stars so deeply. I feel it in my bones that this is where I belong. That this is where I was meant to be. What I was meant for. And I didn't know I could feel that for a person. But when I look at you, Ranboo, all I see is the universe. What are you saying? Ranboo stammers, vision wobbling with how hard his heart is beating, thundering away in his chest like the explosive rumble of ship engines kicking on. Not possible, not possible. Fabricating, making it all up, insane. And scooting to face him fully, Tubbo sticks his lower right hand in a pocket. What I'm saying is this. And then, in horribly accented, but perfectly understandable Endirian, Tubbo asks, "You're the only one for me. I love you in the way no one else has. And I ask if you could love me like that too." He then draws his hand out, and shining in the starlight, quivering in the palm of his shaking hand, is a Cariad bead. I've gone insane, is the first thing on Ranboo's mind. But reality doesn't pulse and strobe like a hallucination. This is real. This is real. So his next thought is, he's gone insane. But Tubbo sounds nothing but reasonable when he sniffs around a tremulous smile. Sorry, it took me so long, Stelle. I always did have a thick head. Are you I don't think you, know what you're asking for. Ranboo stumbles in a panic. So sure he must have gotten something lost in translation. Unclear what he's asking. Doesn't know what he's promising. And still not drawing his hand back, Tubbo says even and clear. I'm asking you if you'd let me stand by your side for eternity. I'm asking if you'd let me love you like you want to be loved. I'm asking you to marry me. There's no arguing against that. There's no arguing against that. Holy shit, there's no arguing against that. Ranboo is very lightheaded all of a sudden. Has to throw an arm back to keep himself upright. Uses the other to push the hair out of his eyes. Staring, unbelieving at Tubbo sitting across from him with a Cariad bead in his hand. You want to marry me? Yes. Tubbo's so quick to say it. Ranboo isn't sure he's hearing him correctly. Lost in translation. Thousands of light years apart, but no, not really. Only a few feet, so easy to bridge that gap. Just stretch your hand out. Repeats again, incredulously. You want to marry me? Yes, if you want me to. Tubbo stutters, a little shy, dipping his head to the side before looking back up, antenna flicking nervously. I don't know how else to describe it. I really think... No. No, I know you're the only one for me. There's never going to be anyone else. You're my Cariad, Ranboo. Ranboo's never seen a star form, but he imagines it's something like this. Energy races up through his body, makes all his hair stand on end, burns through his veins, sets everything alight in an all-consuming wave of joy. And the thing inside him, the thing that is him, the star at his core, the one that loves him so wholly, laughs loud and soaring and jubilant. But you don't... He is rambling incoherently, mind not caught up to what his heart has already decided, forever lagging with weighted suspicions and paranoia, waiting for the other shoe to drop. We don't work. You want to go. I want to stay. I want a house, a home. I want to stay here, but you want adventure, freedom. You don't want... I'm tired, Ranboo. Tubbo sighs. Sounds like he means it. Dark circles under his eyes. Muscles so tense all the time. Needs a break. Needs pictures on the wall. A place to come back to that's his, that's theirs. Shoulders dropping a bit, like he's carrying something insurmountably heavy. I'm tired of running. Of getting shot at, worrying about if I'll get to live another day with you or not. Scratching a hand through his hair, Tubbo pushes his truly unruly bangs out of his eyes. And it's dark. It's hard to be certain. But Ranboo gets the feeling that fire that's always burning in him has waned a little. Not dimmed, not extinguished, just settled. Look, I'm never going to stop flying. I can't ignore who I am, and I know you can't either. You love the stars just as much as I do, but I think I finally realized how much I've missed the Earth. But being grounded is nice sometimes, you know? Pleasant feeling, weighing you down, pinning you here, grounding you in this moment, keeping you here. He understands. He feels it too. He wants to stay. And Ranboo swallows rough, hands drifting to settle in his lap, stares at the way Tubbo's arm has started to shake. But he refuses to drop it, palms still held out in offering as he hushes. It's hard right now for me to stay in one place, but I want to. I want to give you that life if you want. Sailing through the stars back here, back to your home, the one he wants to give you, the one he wants to build together. But I promise, as soon as my warrants are dropped, we can come back here, permanently. Forever. He means forever. He's talking about a future with you. He's talking about an eternity with you. He wants to stay. Oh, ancients, he wants to stay. We can pick a spot and I'll build you that house. Make sure the ceilings are tall enough for you and everything. Put lots of windows in, whatever you want. Little house, set into the hill. Sunflowers out front. Walking to the market barefoot, hand in hand. Braids in your hair. Beads catching in the light. I love you being what it's supposed to be. I love you being forever. And with a great, rattling thud, those chains start dropping away over the door that leaks sunlight. For once, it doesn't ease open on its own, patiently waiting for Ranboo to reach out, to twist the handle, and let it all free, finally. He's still scared, still worried about if they're understanding one another. But they are, and it's okay. Don't have to do it alone. He's scared too. But he laid it all on the line for you. And this is a partnership, isn't it? And taking a deep breath, Ranboo wraps his hand around that handle and whispers, ragged, "Can we paint the front door yellow?" And because it's Ranboo, there's a dozen more questions threaded through that one that go unsaid. Are you sure? Do you know what you're promising? Is this what you want? And because Tubbo is Tubbo, he seems to hear them all anyways, face going incredibly tender as he murmurs, "Of course, Stella Dore." Ranboo launches himself forwards without another thought, hits Tubbo with perhaps a bit too much force, and they almost go tumbling off the boulder. But gossamer wings buzz furiously and keep them upright. Tucking his head into the crook of Tubbo's neck, Ranboo stammers out, "I love yous," with the full elation of knowing they both understand now. And finally, achingly, there's arms around him again, fire-bright hands spread out across his back, like sunlight slanting warm and beautiful over his face. But this time, they're not going away. It's entirely familiar and entirely alien to be sitting back to front again, Ranboo crying and laughing in equal measures, like one of the theatrical, weeping protags from his books. He actually recites the words aloud this time, as Tubbo braids his hair. And nothing has brought him to tears quite like hearing Tubbo repeating after him, sounding like the most lovely of echoes. "Let this braid be a symbol of my commitment to you." Tubbo parrots, weaving strands of hair together in a pattern he can do even in the dark of the night, because he knows it so well. Like how my love for you is threaded throughout my entire being. One set of hands working on the braid, the other tracing gentle shapes over his arms. I'm here, you're here, not going anywhere. Like how our lives will be woven together. Little tugging pull as the bead is slipped over the end of the braid, locking it in place. I'm yours, and you're mine. I am forever yours, no matter what comes. To you, I promise this. Tubbo made him a bead, spent time down in the repair bay when Ranboo wasn't there, agonizing over what he was doing. Terrified he'd already wrecked everything, and paranoid he'd just ruin it further. That Ranboo would step back, step away, and say, "Sorry, it's too broken. It's too damaged. Can't fix this one, have to move on." He was going to ask earlier, on the hill, but Ranboo had asked him to let go instead. And Tubbo had stood there, terrified, because he didn't think he could, fingers clutching at the bead that now rests in Ranboo's hair. "It's nothing fancy," Tubbo murmured, embarrassed, as Ranboo turned the little piece of metal around in the moonlight. Eyes easily picking out all the carved details. Tiny diamond-shaped stars and geometric bees, parts of me and parts of him. Us. It's us. Rippling pattern in the metal itself he's never seen anywhere else. "It's plastisteel. It's part of the Asachi, actually. I didn't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time. No, it's perfect. Really. I adore it." Ranboo soothed, curled his fingers around the bead and pressed it briefly against his chest. "Your Cariad, your ship, everything you hold so close to your heart." Before passing it back, can't stop the wide smile that draws across his face when he feels that familiar weight dragging on his hair again. So incredibly glad he never ended up cutting it. And now you'll never have to, he thinks happily, shifting because it's Tubbo's turn, and he pulls out his bead. He kept it. The one Ranboo made for him, what feels like years ago. He actually kept it. Cares for you, loves you so much. Drops it carefully into Ranboo's waiting palm and smiles at him. Ranboo takes extra care to do the braid properly as he whispers his own promises into the night. Finds it significantly easier this time. Tubbo's hair a lot longer than he's ever seen it. "Well, yeah." Tubbo snickers quietly when Ranboo mentions it. Twists to face him once he's done. Bead winking in the light of the stars. Your bead. Your bead on his braid. Your one, your only, your Cariad. Your husband, for real this time. And there's a sun burning brilliantly in his smile, eyes reflecting the night sky overhead. Your future, your eternity, and you're his. Love catching on every word as he says, "I was growing it out so it'd be easy to braid."